Hey, Brandon here from Snowmod RC. Today we're going to be working on the scale bomber. I picked up a part from A-Main and we are going to get it installed so I have the bomber ready for the scale on the con, which is in a couple weeks. So I also have a steel spur gear coming for the bomber, but this was the more important part that I was looking for. We are installing the AX31331, the RR10 rear sway bar set soft from Axial Racing. It's a great part. It's nice and soft for the bomber, and I have used this before on my last bomber and it did exactly what I wanted to. What we're trying to do today is we're trying to tame the torque twist of the bomber. The bomber out of the box, once the shocks are broken in, on steep climbs, it really likes to reach that front left tire up in the air. So we're going to hopefully tame that, and with this being soft, we should not have limited twists like the bomber is known for. So with that being said, we will tear into this. I do have an extra part that I'm going to show you guys as something you can do on your own or find something to put in there. It's just something I do of my own ideas, just to limit some space, because there is a little bit of side-to-side movement in the bar of the sway bar once you install it, which I'll show you, and that will hopefully limit that a little bit so it's not shifting back and forth. So let's have at it. Alright, so we got everything laid out here, got my instructions. I know how this goes, so I don't really need them. Got all the parts trees laid out. So what you will need off the parts trees themselves are these little guys. These are the ends to the arms for the sway bar. There is long and short. I've already put a little bit of this together just to save time, but as you can see, one is a little bit longer than the other. I use the long ones because when you actually put this on and actuate the suspension, usually the end of the bar will rub a little bit right here. So if you use the short ones, because it's a tapered angle, it will rub even more back up here. So if you get out, you just barely rub the frame right here as it comes up. Sometimes you do have to make, depending on how you have your suspension set up, you will have to make your own custom links, connecting rods from the axle to the sway bar itself. So keep that in mind. These, depending on your setup, these are not always going to be the right size. This is the short one that it tells you to use, which comes with the little all thread piece, and you use a couple rod ends from the tree, and you also use the lower ball from the lower shock mount on the bomber. You just take those out, they're already on the car, and then in the parts trees is the upper ball for the rod end. That's plastic. So once you put all that together, you will have something that looks relatively like this. I do recommend putting this together on the bench before you put it on the car. It's just a little bit easier in my opinion. I've tried it both ways. So I already have one side together, but I'll show you how it goes. So once you get, this is the arm that goes on to the sway bar itself. So it's got a little notch in it. So all you do is you slide that down in there and it'll look like this. And then you take your, the end of this bar is threaded. So you will take your arm end here and obviously you will have to thread this yourself. It does thread pretty easy, but try to make sure that it goes on as straight as possible. Now you don't want to over tighten these, you kind of just want to meet it up so that this piece right here doesn't slide up and down. If you go too tight, this arm will actually start flexing and you'll see it bow out, and you don't want that. So you just, I thread it in right till pretty much you feel the resistance of it touching. And it doesn't take much before it actually starts to bow. And then once you get it on there all the way, you'll see that it lines up and makes it look like one solid piece. There's the seam right there of where the two pieces meet, so they actually fit very nice. You want the rod part obviously facing down, so since we have our bomber already apart, we're going to be installing it basically like this. So the part I was telling you I do, so when I show you the rest here in a second, you will see there's a little bit of space on the bomber between the bracket and the arm. So I found these. I think these came with my SCX-10 too, and I don't know if you guys can really see it, but it's kind of like a body washer, but it's got a little, it's indented on one side and coned on the other. So when you slide it on here, you can see that this is tapered a little bit. So when you slide it on here, it kind of goes over that just enough to take up the space perfectly. You just put one on both sides. So you might want to think of doing some spacer like that. You don't have to, it'll work just fine without it. It was just something I picked up over installing a couple of these. So you really won't need much off the parts trees. You'll recognize some of these parts from other things, but here's a longer set of connecting rods if you need them, and some other miscellaneous stuff on here. So tools wise, you will need your, with the bomber, there's only, well actually with the bomber is one of the few rigs that takes 4 different sizes of Allens. But of your 3 different standard sizes, you will need the smallest one and the medium sized one. So the smallest one is for these screws here. There is a set screw. I know it's really hard to see. There's a set screw right there, and that's what you need the smallest one for. Everything else is the medium size. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your medium size one, and you are going to remove the back screw on this little hoop hanger here, and these will rotate up out of the way. Okay, so it should look just like that, and you want to do that to both sides. Now once you have your sway bar put together, separate, if you do the spacer thing like I did, make sure they're spread apart. And what you're going to do is you are going to set it inside the hoops itself and then rotate them down. And then I usually flip the bar up out of the way so I can get down in here and make sure that's all settled how it's supposed to be, and then you will see how it sits. So you got the little arm, there's the bracket, the bar going across right under the fuel cell, and doing the same thing on the other side. So installed and on the car, it will basically look like this. So once you get that back going, you need the 2 screws that you took out, and you are going to put them back in. And obviously you might have to line up the hole a little bit. This is where also the set screw that I was telling you about right here comes into play. If it's not going down as far as you need it to, you just take your little Allen and just back them off a little bit, and that will let your brackets drop a little bit more so you can get them lined up properly. They are a little bit of a pain in the butt to line up once the bar is in there, but once you get it together, I've never had a problem with one of these. I mean, I've worn out ball ends and stuff, but that's about it. And just snug that up. And once you're done doing that on both sides, you're gonna use these little Allens here, the little tiny set screws. You're gonna use those as basically your tensioner for the bar. So if I back this off quite a bit, you'll see this thing moves pretty easy. It's got a little bit of tension on it because of the spacers I added, but that's it. So now you can see here, let's see if I can get it right. So you see the bar moves up and down. That's what you're using this set screw for. So you want to thread it down a little bit, just a little bit. I usually do it till it just snugs up. So you can see now I actually have to put some force into it. And then I'll back it off maybe a quarter of a turn or so, or I'll sit here and just keep moving it as I'm backing it off until I get free movement but no play. Perfect. You can do the same thing to the other side, but I gotta put the screw in first. Snug that up. Now we're going to do the same thing with the set screw that we did on the other side. Yeah, you'll see the rod moving as I start touching it. Still a little. There we go. No up and down, moves freely. That's how you're supposed to have it. So that is that part installed. Basically all you do after this is let me grab the chassis here. All you're going to do after this is you're going to remove the screws on the upper part of the lower shock mount in the rear, and that ball joint that is in here is with the ball joint that goes in the ball joint that goes in the bottom of the connecting rod here. So that will basically go like this. I know it's hard to see, but that will sit like that, relatively close to. And that's the distance where you'll find out real quick if you need to extend these link arms or not. If you do, on a 1-to-1 scale, from all the off-road guys I know and the stuff I've done on my own Jeep, on a real car, you technically, sitting loaded under its own weight and everything, the sway bar should sit relatively level with the frame. So if you set it like this and your bars are way down, what you need to watch out for with these being too short is when the suspension is unloaded, sometimes this will actually lock straight and then fold back, and you don't want that. You only want these to be long enough to come down just before they actually are able to go straight and possibly pop the other way. There are other rod ends that actually have a stop that will kind of lock into this groove up here, but that's up to you. It's all personal preference. So these are a little bit tunable. So that is the AX31331 RR10 rear bomber sway, rear bomber, I can't even talk, rear sway bar set for the bomber. Yeah, that's about all there is to it. It's not very hard or anything like that, but it does accomplish a lot. I'm actually gonna sit here real quick and probably put all this back together and see what I need to do to these links here. But hopefully nothing. We'll see. I still got the stock shocks. On my other bomber, I had 120 millimeter shocks, and I actually had to make these probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch longer to get them to sit properly. So, hopefully you found this useful. If you did, go down, hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them up in the comments, and I'd be happy to answer them. If you want to see something else on the bomber or anything else on any of our rigs, go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. And we will see you next time. I'm not sure if I'll do an episode on how to change the spur gear. Maybe I will. Why not, right? So, stay tuned, and everybody have a good weekend. See you later.